to quite a few of you yesterday. This is a bit like part 2, but it's looking at higher order thinking with video, okay? I work with National Geographic Learning, so some of the videos I'm using today have appeared in some of my materials, but they are all available online. So the videos you're watching today, you can go and use them next week in your classroom. You'll find them, and I'll give you all the links at the end. Like yesterday, the slides, the key information you can find at johnhugheselt.com. You can download the slides, they have all the links to videos and so on. A little bit more about that at the end, just to kind of orientate you to the different places on the internet where you can get them. Some of them have a National Geographic theme, but there's a very good website now called National Geographic Short Film Showcase. Short Film Showcase. Now, normally you think National Geographic films, it's all going to be documentaries about Mount Everest and stuff, yeah? Which is fine. But the Short Film Showcase are short films by lots of new, young filmmakers. They have quite a different angle. It's a fantastic resource, but I'll give you the link at the end to it. But I'm using some of the videos from them. Okay, so 10 tips to kind of get through in 45 minutes. I showed you this slide yesterday, and I talked about balancing lower and higher order thinking, and the idea that we often do a lot of work on basic comprehension, gap fills, true-false questions, those kinds of comprehension questions. And when we use video in the classroom, there's a tendency to use those types of exercises. But in this session, I want to look at how we might challenge students a bit more, building a bit of a mixture of lower and higher order thinking. An example of perhaps a more higher order thinking activity to use with video to generate some critical thinking. Again, these are on the slides that you can download, but a simple kind of what I would call a watching for gist. You know, we do listening for gist activities the first time students listen. You can also have a watching for gist, where, I mean, this activity will work with any authentic video, really. You ask the students to watch the video and say, well, what's the purpose of it? Is it to inform, convince, tell a story, entertain, educate, advertise, shock you? And students watch it and globally think, why did the filmmaker make this video? So it's just kind of giving a nice gist activity, but it's also providing students with a vocabulary to talk about video. We often use video in the classroom, but we don't necessarily give them the language to talk about it. And I think that's really helpful when you start using videos with students. So they watch the video, they think of the purpose, and then they think of other types of video that they might watch, like a trailer for a movie, a music video, the news, a how-to video, and think about what is the actual purpose. So they're starting to think about video in their own lives and why they use it. So you're just kind of giving them that vocabulary, but thinking about video slightly more deeply, at a more sort of critical thinking level. It's a nice way to start off a lesson. Tip number 3, a different way to lead into a lesson. Often we can use very short videos to start a lesson, like a 30-second video that just gets students' interest. Having said I'm going to show you videos from the internet, I'm actually going to show you a video that I made. And I'm very keen on using what I call Vox Pops videos. And they're very easy to make. You get your phone, and you interview somebody, and you video their response. Now, one way you can use it, you know, in course books, we like to have our leading questions. So if the unit is free time, you know that on page 8 of the course book, it will probably be something like exercise 1, that's okay. Exercise 1, work in pairs, ask your partner, what do you like doing in your free time, why do you like doing it? Yeah? That would be a typical example. And as you know, my typical example, Monday morning, 9 o'clock, your students might not be super keen to just talk about that straight away. But if you ask somebody around the school, like another teacher, those two questions and you video them, and then you show the video to the students as you're leading. I show the video of the person talking without them knowing what the questions were, and I say, watch the video, what were the two questions the person was answering? They write down what they think the questions were, and then I say, okay, turn to page 8, compare your ideas with the questions on the page. That's more motivation to open the course book. But they've also seen a video model of what it is you want them to produce. So it's a really simple thing to do. Now I've got one that I'm going to use with you now, which is slightly different because it's somebody talking about how they use video in the classroom. So I'm going to demonstrate it, but I've adapted it for this situation. It also illustrates how it's nice to bring a video into the classroom and bring in an outside person. When your students are a bit bored of always listening to the teacher, you can bring in an outside expert. So I brought in an outside expert today. His name's Ed. He's a brilliant teacher trainer, very good author. And I interviewed Ed about using video in the classroom. I asked him 3 questions. I want you to watch Ed speaking, listen to his answers, and try to guess what do you think the 3 questions were that Ed was answering. Okay, so here's Ed. And you're listening for you're guessing what the 3 questions were that I asked him.
One video that I really like is a video of some tourists in what we think is France, trying to get directions. And the tourist is trying to communicate, and in the video it turns out that the French people are actually English, and there's a lot of confusion about whether they're speaking French or English. It's absurd, it makes no sense, and it's really fun. A lovely activity is getting students to choose a picture. I've used Banksy, who's a graffiti artist. The students have to choose a picture, and then they have to explain why they chose the picture. But the difference is they get another classmate to film them using their mobile phone. So they go off somewhere, out of the classroom, around the school, and they describe their picture, why they liked it, what they find interesting about it. And then we have a video of a student describing a picture, which can be used to show to other students. One thing I found that was really interesting was a very shy teenage student did this activity where she was filmed describing a picture, and when I asked her afterwards what she felt about the activity, she said, well, at first I was really shy and hated it, but actually I spent lots of time on YouTube watching talking head videos, and I've always secretly wanted to make one. So there's something about the selfie culture of filming yourself and being filmed which actually really appeals to teenagers in particular.
Okay, can you turn to your partner and tell them what do you think the 3 questions were that I asked Ed? techniques now is to use these questions to interview each other. We don't have that much time, but I'm going to ask you now with your partner to just discuss question 3. See what your partner thinks is the answer. What's one of the advantages of using video in the classroom? 1 minute, what does your partner think? Question 3. It's motivates students, adds an extra dynamic to the classroom. Yeah, any other reasons?
It covers different learning styles.
Covers?
Different learning styles.
Different learning styles, different ways of learning, particularly taps into the visual learners, yeah?
It's like the saying that like a picture's worth 1,000 words and like a video is like, you know, an infinite source.
Right, more than 1,000 words. Yes, you can create more than 1,000 words with a video, yeah? Any others?
Well, I work in ESP, and for me, it's bringing an expert into the classroom. For example, a little bit of a physics lecture.
Right. It's a bit like me bringing Ed into the thing. I may as well not be here. I just play the video of Ed for 45 minutes. Yeah, so bringing the outside expert. Yeah, yeah. Any other reasons? Authentic language. We'll come to that in a minute. Observing authentic language. Perhaps one of the reasons is the picture superiority effect. If you Google picture superiority effect, you'll see lots of evidence of the importance of teaching language with vocabulary. It's kind of common sense as language teachers, we know it, but it's the evidence that supports how much we remember if we add images to language. The recall is far greater. The other thing about video, of course, is that we can play around with this. We can play a video with the sound off, and students, it can activate their language, or we can play it with the video off and just hear the language and guess what they're seeing. So it has different impacts. I also think there's work done on mirror neurons. If you're interested in mirror neurons, there's a very good TED talk, but there were some interesting experiments done with mirror neurons. Scientists took a group of students. The first group of students, they brought into a room, they videoed them, they put things on their head to measure the brainwave patterns. Each student had to pick up a smell. Sometimes the smell was nice, sometimes it was horrible. So they videoed them smelling things, and then they measured the brain activity. Then the next day they took a different group of students who sat down, they measured the brain activity. These students watched a video of the other students smelling the smell. They didn't actually smell the smell, they watched the reaction. And the brain activity was very similar for the student watching the other student smell the smell, if you see what I mean. So there was an emotional engagement just by watching the face. So I could have, with Ed, you could have just listened to what he was saying, but there's something about seeing him saying it that engages you much more. That relationship that video brings into the classroom, far greater. And it's probably a strong argument, one of the arguments for using more video in the class and less audio that's sort of disconnected, because we don't quite a lot, unless we're listening to the radio or audio books, a lot of the time we're listening and watching at the same time. Okay, somebody mentioned another reason for observing authentic language. One of the most liberating things for me as a course book writer is I'm reducing the amount of text, listening text that I'm writing. I'm writing far less scripts that we're then recording with actors. You know, the ones that sound utterly inauthentic, yeah? They often have an English actor with an Italian accent and you're all sitting there thinking, he's not Italian. But now we can go out with video cameras into the street and just record people like I recorded Ed. But when I see a video that models authentic language in some way, it's something I have to grab onto. And I'm going to share a video with you. This is from the National Geographic Short Film Showcase. I'm just going to show you the video. It's quite short, but I want you to sit and watch it. What is the authentic piece of language that it demonstrates beautifully to students? I think it's pretty clear what it is, but it's a really nice piece of authentic video. In other words, what would you use it for in a lesson? What language point?
One night I was bored in my apartment and decided to take my telescope out to the sidewalk. The moon was out, and I thought, why not? Within a few minutes, people started walking over and asking what this thing was.
What is that, bro?
It's a telescope.
Do you want to check out the moon?
Do you want to take a look at the moon?
It's the moon. How am I supposed to help?
You're supposed to live right here.
Oh, indeed.
Yeah. That's where it all started. It just sort of went from there.
Oh my gosh! Whoa, that is cool! Tommy, check this out!
Oh, man.
Is that awesome?
Yeah, that's pretty awesome. No way.
No way, that's the moon? Oh, you can see the craters. Yeah, that is so cool. What?
Look at the edge. I want to see more of it.
Is it for real?
This is amazing.
Wow, that is intense right there, boy. Bro, that looks like that's right down the street. Man, what you got here? Man, that looks like that's right down the street.
It's a nice way to do it.
What's that over there?
To be able to see it up close and feel like you can almost reach out and touch it, that's what makes it real to us.
That is incredible. I kind of felt like I just went
It makes you realize that we are all on a small little planet and we all have the same reaction to the universe we live in. I think there's something special about that, something unifying. It's a great reminder that we should look up more often.
That's a video called A New View of the Moon. I used it in a book series called World English, but it is available online. I'll give you the link at the end. But I particularly like it if you're sitting observing. You probably guessed that it was great for teaching this kind of language. Because students can watch the video and tick the phrases they hear, but quite often with authentic language in video, we use it to teach, say, vocabulary or grammar items in authentic. But this is great for pronunciation. You really